Hi guys, just saw an excellent teaching by Charles from Interrupts165 on how Roshashana, Day of Atonement and Tabernacles all intersect on the 31st of October. It's brilliant. I've cut that bit out and here it is right now.
I want to get into this, the Jubilee year that we're in now. Some people are saying, no, it's not a Jubilee year, and we've shown this a few times. Our sister Emma made this a Jubilee calendar, and what I want to show everyone is how it works. And we have this available. It's available for everyone to see and to look at. It's a calendar that marks different times and events. So it marks the destruction of the Second Temple. It marks when Harris refurbished the Second Temple. It also has a marking of when Jesus was born on 9/11, 3 BC. And it also has a marking of the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. Now, each one represents its own Jubilee. You can go 50-year counts from the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ, and it'll eventually bring you to a certain time frame. You see how it has 50, and then 50, and then 50, and then 50. This is keeping an accurate count of 50 years, every 50 years from the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ in 33 AD. And then also here, this is keeping an accurate count every 50 years. You see the 50 years, 50 years, 50 years. It's an accurate count of every 50 years from the time that Jesus Christ was born. And it's the same thing that we're doing up here. So I just want you to see the pattern that's going on. It's a fifth. So this count for the destruction of the temple, it'll go 50 years, 50 years, 50 years from the time the temple was destroyed in 70 AD. So you go 70 AD plus 50 years, plus 50 years, plus 50 years. And where does that time frame bring us to? It brings us to where we are right now. If you continually count 50 years from 70 AD, it brings you to precisely 2020. And right now, today, we are in fact in a 50th year of a Jubilee. And all you got to do is count from 70 AD. And keep adding 50 years, and you'll see for yourself that every 50 years from 70 AD, it brings us to precisely 2020, and it ends up in a 50th year of a Jubilee. So I just wanted to be clear to everyone. There's been a lot of questions about that, and so I wanted to show this wonderful chart that was made by our sister Emma from Discord. She painstakingly put this together so everyone can review it and take a look at it. And it'll be the same thing here in 2033. This will be the 50th Jubilee now from the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. So that count kept going, right? It was down here. So if you go 50 years, 50 years, 50 years, 50 years from the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ, it'll be a 50th Jubilee in 2033 from his death and resurrection. So this calendar is keeping an accurate count of the different Jubilees. There's more than one Jubilee. You can have a Jubilee. A Jubilee is an anniversary. It's basically an anniversary date. So this is the anniversary date from the destruction of the temple, and this is an anniversary date from the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. So in 2020, there's a Jubilee for the destruction of the temple, and in 2033, there's a Jubilee year for the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. I wanted to be clear why we're saying this is a Jubilee year. And if anyone wants to review this, it's attached to our spreadsheet, and we're going to attach our spreadsheet to our calendar so you can see how that all works out. Now I want to show you something that we've done before, and we had it on the videos with John and Dr. Barry Yaw, but I want to show everybody here. So we showed prior that what's happened. The Jews have had on their own calendar, they've had different things on their dates, right? So they've had the New Year, the Feast of Trumpets. Okay, Tishri 1 was September 19th, Tishri 10, the Day of Atonement, was September 28th, and Tabernacles was October 3rd. But these days have passed. We need to all understand, brothers and sisters, these days have passed. So the Lord cannot be using the Hebrew calendar. But what if he truly, in fact, is using the Enoch calendar that we've all pointed out to everybody? The sun count for the Enoch calendar and the moon count. And if he is, then where does it place the true seventh month? Enoch told us, when Amish and Mike made the calendar, Enoch told us that after you've reached the 177th day, after that 177th day, begins the 7th month for the new year. And in this column, this is the Enoch count, right? We started it from the top. Just keep track of that again, right? This is where we started it from. Okay? This is the first day. This is day 1. Enoch's 177-day count. And when you go down this column, it correctly and precisely ends exactly where Enoch told us it should end. The 177th day, and then the next day is the first day of the 7th month, which is the correct Tishri 1 according to the Enoch calendar. So that's where we are. And this is where we are right now, folks. We have now just passed Rosh Hashanah, the new year, which was October 17th, Tishri 1. Today is the 7th month, 10th day. It's the Day of Atonement. Today, as we speak right now, today is the Day of Atonement according to the Enoch calendar, October 26th. And what are we approaching? Well, October 31st, it's the Day of Tabernacles. And then when we get to November 9th, it's the 7th month, 24th day, where Daniel tells us that he saw Jesus Christ on earth. This is it right here. So we can look at this Enoch calendar and show that we have now precisely put the 7th month right now in real time, speaking right now. So what's happened so far? So let's see where we are. So we know that Rosh Hashanah, the new year, has passed as of October 17th. And we know that we're in the Day of Atonement right now as of today. 7th month, 10th day, October 26th. So today is the Day of Atonement. So what are we expecting? Well, we're expecting the escape of the bride, right? So what can we show? Well, let's take a close look at this. We've been pointing to any one of these dates could be a viable date of escape, okay? And so now we know we are passing, and Israel is now passing the Day of Atonement in Israel as we're speaking right now. And we are now approaching October 31st, 7th month, 15th day. But what happens on this day? Something very interesting happens. Even though the moon count, see the moon here? The moon count? It's witnessing that this is 7th month, 10th day, the Day of Atonement. Okay? And then also the moon is witnessing that on October 31st, this is the 7th month, 15th day, the Day of Tabernacles. But once we laid this out, I realized I caught something that's happened. I want you all to focus in on this. Although the moon is testifying that this date, October 31st, it's testifying it's the 7th month, 15th day, Tabernacles, the sun count, the sun is testifying that this day is the 7th month, 10th day, which is the Day of Atonement. Isn't that shocking? We now have the Enoch calendar. Moon count is counting this day, October 31st, as the Day of Tabernacles, and the sun is testifying that this day is the correct Day of Atonement. And if this is true, brothers and sisters, if this is true, that the sun is testifying that this is the Day of Atonement, and this is the Day of Tabernacles, understand what Levitical law says. Leviticus 25 says that in a Jubilee year, which we just showed you that we are now in a Jubilee year, in a Jubilee year, Rosh Hashanah, the new year, has to be celebrated on the Day of Atonement. Where we thought this was the Day of Atonement, what if what's really going on is the sun is testifying this is the Day of Atonement? And if this is the true Day of Atonement, then Rosh Hashanah, by Levitical law, by God's law, by God's own law in Leviticus 25, you can read that. In a Jubilee year, the trumpets of Rosh Hashanah have to sound on the Day of Atonement, which the sun is testifying that this day, October 31st, is the Day of Atonement, and the moon is testifying that this is the Day of Tabernacles. So now we have all three. We have the Day of Trumpets, the New Year, the Day of Atonement, the Day of Tabernacles, all being celebrated, or should be celebrated, all on the exact same day, October 31st of this year. This is an absolute shock that we could have three feasts all on the same day. And that's possible only because the Enoch calendar has two counts. The sun count testifying its atonement, and the moon count testifying that it's tabernacles in the same day. And since it's a Jubilee year, now Rosh Hashanah, the trumpets should be sounding on this same date. The date of atonement, the day of tabernacles. And what does Joel tell us? I'm going to just show you really quickly, and you guys can go look this up. If you go look up Joel 2:15, what does Joel tell us? He tells us it's a great and terrible day of the Lord. What if he's talking about the great day is tabernacles? Because what does he call tabernacles? He says, call a solemn assembly. And we know the solemn assembly is for tabernacles. And what does he say? He also says, proclaim a fast, he says. Day of Atonement. Is he mentioning two things for the same day? When you go to Joel 2:15, he says, proclaim a fast, call a solemn assembly. The fast we know is atonement. The solemn assembly we know is tabernacles. Joel 2:15 is clearly telling us it's the Day of Atonement in tabernacles. And when you go to Joel 2:15, he also starts off by saying, blow the trumpets in Zion. Blow the trumpets in Zion, he tells us. And where do we find that? Let's go to Joel 2:15. Let's take a quick look at that real quick. I want everyone to see this. He starts it off. Blow ye the trumpet in Zion and sound an alarm. Do you see what's going on? And what does he say here? He repeats it again. Blow ye the trumpet in Zion. This is trumpets. This is the Rosh Hashanah. Sanctify a fast. This is atonement. Gather the people. Sanctify a congregation. Assemble the elders. It's an assembly. So we have trumpets. The day of trumpets is the New Year's. We know that. And calling a fast, this is the Day of Atonement, and calling an assembly. This we know is tabernacles. And what is he saying? Let the bridegroom go forth of his chamber, and the bride out of her closet. Boom. The escape. The bridegroom is coming. The bride goes out of her closet while the bridegroom is coming forth from his chamber. When? Trumpets, atonement, tabernacles. Exactly what we show on the calendar. When we go to the calendar, what are we showing all happening on the same day? Jubilee year, Rosh Hashanah, trumpets. And then atonement, the sun's declaring its atonement. And then the moon's declaring its tabernacles, the assembly. All on the same day, October 31st. Brothers and sisters, we're looking at this day, and I would like everyone to keep their eyes and ears open, keep in prayer, keep fast, keep in watch. This may in fact be the day of our escape, October 31st. And I'm calling this the convergence. This is absolutely a convergence. All three feast days in one. I've never heard of such a thing. I've never seen this happen before. It's an absolute convergence of all three feast days happening at once. Okay, moving on to something else here real quick. Let's move on to tabernacles. I want to show everybody how all this fits into tabernacles. So this very well could be the day of the escape. We're in this ministry agreeing that yes, this is a very high watch date. Everybody keep your eyes and ears open, keep in prayer, keep in fast. Keep watch. This is a very, very high watch date, October 31st. Okay? But it's very possible, and I'll say this again, it's very possible that the escape may not happen until the great 8th day of Tabernacles. See, Tabernacles is here, and then it's 7 days to the end of Tabernacles, and then they have what they call the great 8th day. And I think I've showed this before in some of our prior videos, but I'm going to do it for those who haven't seen it. So this is the Tabernacles on the current Hebrew calendar, but I just want to show you something. This is the 7 days right here. These are the 7 days of Tabernacles, and then it ends on a day that's the 8th day called Shemini Azeret and Simchat Torah. And what they do is they combine both of these 2 days into one day, into one festival. And here's what they call it. Let me move this down real quick. They call it the 8th day of assembly. Okay? They combine both days and call it the 8th day of assembly. And right here they show it. They says the holidays of Shemini Azeret and Simchat Torah are combined into a single day, and the names are used interchangeably. So these 2 days that we're pointing to, this date here and this date here, even though this is the wrong Hebrew calendar, when we place it on our calendar, it ends up between November 7th, right here, and November 8th. This is the great 8th day of the Feast of Tabernacles. So these are the 7 days and then the great 8th day combined right here. So yes, it is. And so when I went through this, I said, well, I've never heard of a book of Noah. There's several chapters. Noah wrote several chapters in a book. And this book was placed inside of his grandfather's book, which was Enoch. But somewhere down in history, someone pulled the entire books of Noah out of the book of Enoch. And so now they've been separated. And after I stumbled on this, I found something very shocking. And what I did was I placed it onto this sheet so we could all read it and see it. And then when I was doing my studies today, our sister Emma, a few hours after I started this study, and I didn't really tell anybody about it. I told Mike about it. I told Jamie about it. But I never really shared it with anyone else. I just found it this morning. And then several hours later, within about, I'd say a good half hour before this video, our sister Emma, somehow by the grace of God and the power of the Holy Spirit, she stumbled on the exact same book. And she gave me a copy of the stuff that she found. And this is what she found, and she highlighted it. So I got this. It's the exact same thing. I just found it in a different version. And then she came across this version of it. And this is going to be such a shocking revelation. I'm going to take some time and go through it with everybody. Watch what it says. In the 50th year, in the 7th month, on the 14th day of the month of the life of Enoch. So this is Noah writing about his grandfather Enoch. And look how it says, in the 50th year. What did we say we are in, brothers and sisters? Didn't we just say we are in a Jubilee year? That this right now we're in is a Jubilee year, and I showed you the 50-year counts, all leading up to 2020, from the destruction of the temple in 70 AD. And for those of you who want to take the time and do it, count 70 AD and count 50 years and 50 years and 50 years and 50 years. It'll bring you to 2020. It's a simple count. It'll bring you right to 2020. We are in a Jubilee year. And what did this just say that we just read? In the 50th year, we are in a Jubilee. We are in a 50th year. And when? In the 7th month, on the 14th day. When is that? Didn't we just talk about that day? 7th month, 14th day? Where do we find that date? 7th month, 14th day. This is the date. Evening to evening. This is the same date that Mike taught about in Zephaniah 1:10, and we're going to review that. Where there was the day of the howling, the day of the fish cry, when it was in the constellations of the fish. In the fish cry, there was a day of the howling, October 31, 7th month, 14th day. And this just happens to be the exact same time in the 50th in a Jubilee year that Noah's writing about. On the exact same day that we're expecting the escape. And what does he say? He talks about the escape. You want to see it? Here it comes. Here it comes. And in the 50th year, in the 7th month, on the 14th day of the month, in the life of Enoch, in that parable, I saw how the heaven of heavens was shaken violently, and the Most High of angels, and 1,000 thousands and 10,000 times 10,000s were extremely disturbed. Doesn't this sound familiar? thousands and thousands and 10,000s times 10,000s? Isn't that Daniel 7:10, Revelation 5:11? We're going to get to that in a second. And then I saw the head of days sitting on the thrones. Remember Revelation 4:1? In the throne room? Sitting on the throne of his glory, and angels and righteous were sitting around him. What else does he tell us? And the great trembling seized me, and fear took hold of me, and my loins collapsed and gave way, and my whole being melted, and I fell upon my face. And isn't it what Daniel said when he saw Jesus Christ? He fell upon his face. And we saw this in Daniel 10. And the holy Michael sent another holy angel, and one of the holy angels, and he raised me. And when he raised me, in my spirit returned, for I had been unable to endure the sight of the host and the disturbances and the shaking of heaven. Here it comes. And the holy Michael said to me, what sight has disturbed you like this? Until today has the day of his mercy lasted. What day? Until today has his mercy lasted? Until what day? In the 50th year, the 7th month, 14th day, until this day his mercy lasted? Is it impacting you yet? Until today has the day of his mercy lasted, and he has been merciful and long-suffering towards those who dwell upon the ground. This is the day he's marked, the day he's told us. His mercy has lasted unto this day. In the 50th year, the 7th month, the 14th day of the month. Man, I'm getting goosebumps just telling you guys this. Is this why the book of Noah has been hiding and they've pulled it out? Because the angel of the Lord told him, unto this day his mercy has lasted, and he has been merciful and long-suffering towards those who dwell on the ground? What else does he say? And when the day and the power and the punishment and the judgment come, that the Lord of spirits has prepared for those who worship the righteous judgment, and for those who deny the righteous judgment, and for those who take his name in vain. And that day has been prepared. What day? That day's been prepared for the judgment in the 50th year on the 14th day of the 7th month. For those who have taken his name in vain, and that day has been prepared. For what? For the chosen, it's a covenant, but for the sinners, a visitation. Wow! For the chosen, that day that's prepared is a covenant, but that day for the sinners is the visitation. Drop the mic. What's he saying here? Let's take a look at that. The visitation for the sinners is going to be a visitation. Where do we find that? Well, that's going to be in Luke, right? Luke 19:44. That's where it comes from. What does Jesus say? Christ tells us himself when he weeps over Jerusalem. And when he was come near, he beheld the city and wept over it, saying, if thou hast known, even thou, at least in this thy day, the things which belong to thy peace, but now they are hid from thine eyes. For the days shall come upon thee, that thine enemies shall cast a trench about thee, encompass thee round about, and keep thee on every side, and shall lay thee even with the ground. This is the destruction talked about in Daniel 9, the desolations of Jerusalem. Jesus himself is telling us, and shall lay thee even with the ground. And what else? And thy children within thee, and they shall not leave in thee one stone upon the other. Here it comes. Because thou knowest not the time of thy visitation. Thou knowest not the time of thy visitation. What did he just tell us? What did we just see in that verse? For this day has been prepared. For the chosen, it's a covenant. But for the sinners, it's a visitation. Drop the mic. And what day's been prepared? What day? The 50th year. We're in the 50th year of a Jubilee. 14th day of the 7th month.